Right now, one of the most interesting electric vehicles in the world is not sitting in an American showroom. It is not missing because it is unsafe. It is not missing because it cannot function as a real electric car. It is missing because the United States has built a wall around it. That wall is not made of concrete. It is made of tariffs, software rules, tax credit restrictions, and national security concerns. And the clearest example of that wall is the way America treats Chinese electric vehicles. If you have watched car or tech content over the past year, you have probably heard the same thing again and again. Chinese EVs are not just cheap, they are advanced. They are packed with technology, and in some cases, they feel far more premium than their price suggests. Marcus Brownlee, also known as MKBHD, reviewed one of these Chinese EVs at the end of 2025. His reaction was simple. If these cars ever reach the United States, they could seriously challenge almost everything already being sold here. The car he tested cost around $42,000, but by his impression, it felt like something that might cost closer to $75,000 if it were made in the United States. And that was not even the cheapest example. BYD sells the Seagull for roughly $10,000 to $12,000. It has strong reviews, a low price, and the kind of value that would instantly get attention from American buyers. But most Americans cannot walk into a dealership and buy it. Why? Because starting in 2024, the United States raised tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles from 25% to 100%. That policy began under Joe Biden, and after Donald Trump took office in November of 2024, the 100% tariff stayed in place. But even that is only one part of the wall. In January of 2025, the United States finalized a connected vehicle software ban. The rule says that vehicles using Chinese or Russian linked software or hardware cannot be sold in the United States. The reason given is national security. The fear is that connected cars could collect sensitive data and send it back to foreign governments. So even if the 100% tariff disappeared tomorrow, Chinese EVs would still face another barrier. The software ban would still keep many of them out. On top of that, the EV tax credit system favors cars assembled in North America and battery materials sourced from the United States or approved trade partners. That means Chinese electric vehicles are not only taxed heavily, they are also blocked by software rules and excluded from key consumer incentives. And that is why this story is not really just about cars. It is about a much bigger shift in how America chooses to trade with the rest of the world. The Chinese EV wall is only the first piece of a much bigger story. What is happening right now is not limited to one country, one car company, or one product category. It is part of a larger shift in American trade policy. Over the past couple of years, the United States has moved toward one of the most aggressive tariff campaigns it has seen in roughly a century. These policies have touched automobiles, electronics, steel, aluminum, and now pharmaceuticals. They have also changed the way America deals with AI chip exports. The average tariff rate in the United States rose from about 2.4% to 9.6% across all trading partners. That is the highest level in around 80 years. In February of 2026, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the law being used by the White House to enforce many of these tariffs was not valid. The court said the president did not have legal authority to impose most of them under that law, so a large portion of those tariffs was thrown out. But the very next day, Trump used a different law to place a 10% tariff back on everything. Then in April, he announced another round of tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper, along with tariffs of up to 100% on pharmaceutical imports. At the same time, AI chip export controls became part of this new trade system. Companies could still export certain AI chips, like NVIDIA's H200 or AMD's MI325X, but they had to pay the United States government 15% of the revenue from those sales. This is where the word protectionism becomes important. Protectionism means a government uses tariffs, quotas, or restrictions to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. The idea sounds simple. If foreign products become more expensive, people may buy American products instead. If they buy American products, American jobs may be protected. On paper, that sounds reasonable. It sounds patriotic. It sounds like a way to bring manufacturing back, reduce trade deficits, and make the country stronger. But there is a very important question hiding underneath all of this. What happens when the same policies that are supposed to protect American workers also make cars, electronics, medicine, and everyday products more expensive for American families? To understand why this matters, we have to look backward. Because America has tried something like this before, and the last time it happened, the results were painful. The year was 1930. The United States was already in a fragile position. The Great Depression had started in October of 1929, and the country was looking for answers. Jobs were disappearing. Businesses were struggling. Farmers and manufacturers were under pressure. Politicians wanted to show that they were protecting American workers from foreign competition. That was the environment that produced the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Under President Herbert Hoover, the law raised import duties on more than 20,000 items coming into the United States from foreign trade partners. The logic was almost exactly the same as the logic being used today. Put America first. Protect American farmers. Protect American manufacturers. Make foreign goods more expensive so American goods can compete. But there was a warning sign before the law was even signed. More than 1,000 economists signed a petition urging President Hoover not to approve the Tariff Act. They believed it would make the economic crisis worse, not better. And the surprising part is that Hoover himself did not seem enthusiastic about the bill either. He reportedly disliked it and opposed it. But political pressure from his party, his cabinet, and business interests pushed him towards signing it anyway. So the law went into effect. And in the years that followed, trade collapsed. United States imports fell by 66%, from $4.4 billion in 1929 to $1.5 billion in 1933. American exports to Europe also crashed, dropping from $2.3 billion to $784 million. By almost every measure, the policy became a disaster. It did not save the American economy. It did not magically restore prosperity. Instead, it helped deepen a period of economic pain at the worst possible time. Then, in 1934, under Franklin D. Roosevelt, the United States moved in the opposite direction with the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act. After that, America spent the next 70 years building a global free trade system through institutions and agreements like the World Trade Organization, NAFTA, and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. That long shift did not happen by accident. It happened because the country had learned how badly protectionism could fail. So now, when America begins raising walls again, the question becomes uncomfortable. Are we correcting a broken trade system, or are we repeating one of the most expensive mistakes in modern economic history? Now that we understand the history, let's bring this back to the present. Because today's trade policies are not just abstract political decisions. They are already showing up in the price of cars. We already talked about the wall keeping Chinese electric vehicles out of the United States. But the impact does not stop with Chinese EVs. It reaches across the entire automobile industry. The reason is simple. No car assembled in the United States is completely made in the United States. Modern cars are built through global supply chains. Even if the final assembly happens in America, some parts usually come from other countries. That is true for traditional automakers, and it is even true for Tesla, even with its factories in the United States. So when tariffs hit imported steel, aluminum, and auto parts, the effect spreads everywhere. Foreign cars become more expensive, but domestically produced cars also become more expensive because they still depend on imported materials and components. J.P. Morgan estimated that combined tariffs on vehicles and parts will cost the auto industry about $41 billion in the first year. By the third year, that number could rise to $52 billion. That works out to roughly $3,258 in extra cost per vehicle. Kelley Blue Book estimated that for vehicles priced under $40,000, tariffs could add up to $6,000 to the sticker price. Audi has already raised prices on most of its 2026 lineup by around $800 to $4,100 per model. And this is happening at the same time that forecasts for United States auto sales have been lowered for the rest of the year. The reasons include tariffs, the ongoing conflict in Iran, and pressure from oil prices. So the promise was that tariffs would protect the American auto industry. But the immediate reality is that cars are getting more expensive for American buyers, whether those cars are imported or assembled at home. While American consumers are facing higher prices and fewer choices, China is not standing still. BYD has now passed Tesla as the world's #1 electric vehicle seller. China is also the largest automobile manufacturer in the world, and Chinese electric vehicles account for nearly 70% of global EV production. That is the part that makes this trade strategy so risky. The United States is trying to protect its domestic market by keeping Chinese EVs out. But while America sits behind a wall, China is still trading with other countries. Chinese vehicles can still move into markets like Canada, the United Kingdom, and Mexico. So even if the United States blocks these cars at home, the rest of the world can still buy them, test them, drive them, and build familiarity with them. Other countries can get access to cheaper electric vehicles, more competition, and faster innovation. Meanwhile, American buyers may be left paying more for fewer options. It reminds me of a game like Settlers of Catan. If you are the player who refuses to trade resources, you might feel safe for a while. You might think you are protecting what you already have. But the other players keep trading, keep building, and keep moving forward. Eventually, you realize that standing apart did not make you stronger. It made you fall behind. That is the concern with America's current approach to electric vehicles. The wall may protect some companies in the short term, but it may also reduce pressure to compete. And if American companies are not forced to compete with lower cost, high technology Chinese EVs, then American consumers could end up paying more while the industry moves slower. This is not just about whether someone can buy a cheaper car. It is about whether the United States is staying connected to the future of one of the most important industries in the world. And if China keeps trading while America keeps blocking, then the question becomes even more serious. Are we protecting our economy, or are we slowly removing ourselves from the competition? But cars are only one part of the problem. The next place Americans may feel the pressure is in electronics. Morningstar expects prices for durable goods like electronics, toys, tools, and small appliances to rise about 4.5% in 2026. And in some areas, this is already becoming visible. Last year, all three major video game console makers raised prices. Sony raised PlayStation 5 prices in August of 2025. Microsoft raised Xbox Series prices in October. Nintendo launched the Switch 2 at $450, which was $150 higher than the original Switch. The pressure is not stopping with gaming consoles. All five major PC manufacturers, including Lenovo, Dell, HP, Acer, and Asus, have warned of 15 to 20% price increases heading into the second half of 2026. TrendForce, a major industry research firm, estimated that a mainstream $900 laptop could see its cost rise by nearly 40%. That means the same laptop could end up costing more than $200 by the end of the year. Now, tariffs are not the only reason electronics are getting more expensive. There is also a major memory shortage happening right now. AI data centers are creating huge demand for chips and memory, and that demand is changing how companies allocate production. Companies like Samsung and Micron have strong incentives to shift production away from consumer chips and toward AI-related chips because that is where the demand and profit are. And honestly, from a business point of view, that makes sense. Imagine owning a supply store during the gold rush. If shovels are suddenly selling 10 times faster than jeans, you are probably going to stock more shovels. That is where the money is. But if you are an ordinary person who still needs jeans, you are going to feel the shortage. That is what is happening in consumer electronics. AI demand is pulling resources toward data centers, while regular buyers of laptops, phones, and devices face higher prices. Memory is also a major part of manufacturing costs. For many consumer electronics, memory can make up roughly 20 to 35% of the total manufacturing cost. At the same time, contract prices for DRAM and memory have been rising. Worldwide smartphone and PC shipments are also projected to decline this year. Then on top of all of that, the United States also has tariffs on semiconductors from Chinese suppliers. So you have multiple forces hitting the same supply chain at once. AI demand is pulling chips and memory away from consumer devices. Memory prices are rising. Shipments are falling. Tariffs are adding another layer of cost. And when all of those pressures combine, the result is simple. The devices people use every day could become more expensive. The next sector may be even more sensitive than cars or electronics, because this one touches people's health directly. That sector is pharmaceuticals. On April 2nd, 2026, exactly 1 year after the Liberation Day tariffs, President Trump signed an executive order imposing 100% tariffs on patented pharmaceutical products and their active ingredients. The good news is that this does not currently affect many generic drugs, but the structure of the policy matters. If a drug company has signed a pricing deal with the administration and is building manufacturing in the United States, it does not have to pay the tariff. If a company is planning to build in the United States but has not finished yet, the tariff starts at 20% and then rises to 100% over 4 years. And if a company has not made any deal with the administration at all, the tariff is a flat 100%. There is an interesting part here. 14 out of the 17 major drug companies have already signed deals with the administration, and some of those pricing deals appear to be very favorable for consumers. For example, Ozempic and Wegovy, the GLP-1 drugs, used to cost patients more than $1,000 per month. Under these deals, they are expected to become available for around $350 per month. Insulin from Novo Nordisk is capped at $35 per month. Eli Lilly's weight management drug Zepbound has also dropped to around $300 to $350 per month after working with the administration. So on the surface, some of this may look positive. Certain drug prices are coming down, some companies are agreeing to new pricing arrangements, and the policy is designed to pressure pharmaceutical companies to bring more manufacturing into the United States. But the bigger concern is the supply chain. A large share of the American pharmaceutical supply chain still depends on foreign production, especially from countries like China and India. According to the FDA, more than 80% of manufacturing sites for active pharmaceutical ingredients are located outside the United States. China and India together supply more than 70% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients used in American drug manufacturing. That matters because if a drug depends on active ingredients from another country, it can still be affected by that country's tariff rate. And while generic drugs are currently exempt, the White House has said it will reassess that exemption in a year. That is the part that creates uncertainty. If generic drugs eventually get hit, then important medications like antibiotics, cancer treatments, blood pressure medication, and arthritis medication could become more expensive as well. That is why this trade strategy feels like it can snowball. It starts with national security, then it moves into electric vehicles, then it touches steel, aluminum, auto parts, electronics, chips, and now medicine. Cars are already more expensive. Electronics are becoming more expensive. And depending on what happens next, medication could be the next major category where American consumers feel the pressure. So when you pull all of this together, the real question is no longer just about trade policy. It is about what this costs ordinary people. The Tax Foundation estimates that the tariffs currently in effect amount to roughly $1,500 in additional costs per American household in 2026. Yale University's Budget Lab puts the number somewhere between $600 and $300. The exact estimate may vary, but the direction is clear. Americans are paying more for a wide range of goods, not just cars, not just electronics, not just medicine. The pressure can spread across anything connected to global supply chains. The argument behind these policies is that they will bring manufacturing back to the United States. And maybe over the next 5 or 10 years, some factory investments could eventually pay off. But as of right now, the immediate effect is higher prices. There is another problem too. When America reduces trade with one country, demand does not simply disappear. It often shifts somewhere else. Imports from China have declined by $135 billion over the last year compared with 2024. But imports from 13 other Asian nations increased by a combined $193 billion. So even when the United States reduces reliance on China, it may simply be moving that demand into other countries instead of truly rebuilding everything at home. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is not waiting for America. The European Union signed a free trade agreement with India. Under that agreement, India will eliminate or reduce tariffs on 97% of EU goods, while the EU will eliminate tariffs on 89.5% of Indian imports over 7 years. Canada also reached a deal with China to cut tariffs on electric vehicles, the same kind of EVs that American consumers still cannot access. In return, China agreed to cut tariffs on Canadian canola oil. That is what makes this moment so important. While America raises walls, other countries keep making deals. While American consumers pay more, other markets may gain access to cheaper products, stronger supply chains, and faster competition. And that brings us back to the lesson from history. If the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act showed anything, it is that protectionism rarely stays contained. Once one country builds walls, other countries often respond. Retaliation becomes natural. Trade slows down. Prices rise. And the people who were supposed to be protected may end up carrying the cost. So what can you actually do about all of this right now? You cannot personally rewrite American trade policy. You cannot personally remove a tariff, open a market, or change how global supply chains work. But you can still make smarter decisions in your own life, especially if prices continue moving higher. The first thing to think about is major purchases. If you are planning to buy a car, a laptop, or a phone, waiting may not give you a better deal. Based on the projections we have already talked about, many prices are expected to rise in the second half of 2026, not fall. That does not mean everyone should rush out and spend money immediately. But if you already need something and you already plan to buy it, delaying the purchase may end up costing more. The second thing is medication. If you are taking a branded medication, it may be worth talking to your doctor about generic alternatives. Generic drugs are hopefully going to stay exempt from tariffs, at least for now. If your insurance already covers your medication well, that may protect you from some of the impact. But if you have weaker insurance coverage, or if you depend on an expensive brand name drug, it is better to understand your options before prices change. That does not mean making medical decisions on your own. It means having the conversation early with your doctor or hospital so you know what the cost implications could be moving forward. The third thing is your overall consumption. Tariffs are often talked about like they are paid by other countries, but in practice, they can behave like a consumption tax. The more imported goods you buy, the more likely you are to feel the cost. So in this kind of environment, buying fewer things, choosing better quality when possible, and avoiding impulse purchases becomes more than just a good financial habit. It becomes a practical savings strategy. From an investing perspective, the concern is inflation. These trade policies can push prices higher, and in some ways, they already have. If you are sitting only in cash while prices rise, your purchasing power slowly weakens. One possible way to hedge against that is to keep investing in the market. Another is to consider some international stock exposure, because that can help balance the risk of being too dependent on one country's economy. Of course, no one knows exactly how these policies will play out over the long term. Some factory investments may pay off 5 or 10 years from now. Maybe some industries will become stronger. Maybe some supply chains will come back home. But right now, the situation is not easy to ignore. Americans are paying higher prices. The United States may be falling behind in key technologies. Other countries are signing trade deals without us. And while the stock market may look strong because of progress in AI, the stock market is not the same thing as the economy. Many people are still dealing with layoffs, higher living costs, and the pressure of everyday expenses. So it is hard to say with confidence that everything will be fine just because the S&P 500 is near all-time highs. That is why this trade decision matters. It is not just a headline. It is not just about China. It is not just about electric vehicles. It is about how much Americans pay, how competitive the United States remains, and whether building walls makes a country stronger or slowly cuts it off from the future. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think these tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and national security? Or do you think they are making American consumers pay more while the rest of the world keeps moving forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you are interested in more videos about economics, markets, and the hidden forces shaping your money, you may also want to watch the next video about Japan's debt bomb,